Good morning, everyone. It has been a while since I've been back to the YouTube and back on air. I guess you can call it on air. I just wanted to pop in and I saw this article here that caught my interest. And there's a couple of thoughts I had regarding um, alleged correlation between brain damage and essentially being an experiencer, seeing a UAP or UFO, in this case particularly the military. So let's go over to there real quick. Oh, hold on a sec. Um, there we go. Okay, so this is out of the New York Post. And a look inside people's brains who say they've had a UFO encounter. Now, what's interesting about this is that it seems there is some interest in this from the government, and that's before this new UAP office that's coming um, soon. So here, a professor has been. I'm sorry. Let's start from the beginning. A professor has been testing the brains of people who say they've experienced a UFO encounter, and these are the symptoms they display. Dr. Gary Nolan, a professor of pathology at Stanford University, who has published more than 300 research articles and holds 40 U.S. patents, has spent the past decade analyzing materials from alleged unidentified aerial phenomena. It's an interesting note. Speaking to Vice's Motherboard, Nolan opened up about his work and revealed what sparked his interest in UAP. Nolan, who admitted to being an avid reader of science fiction, said his interest took flight when he reached out to a man named Stephen Greer, who claimed a small skeleton was possibly an alien. But we all know this turned out to not be true. His involvement with UAP began after he was asked to use his blood analysis instrumentation to help with cases of pilots who were close to alleged UAPs and horrible, quote, horrible brain damage. When asked if he could describe the more abnormal effects on the brains observed with the MRIs, Dolan said, if you've ever looked at an MRI of somebody with multiple sclerosis, there's something called white matter disease. It's scarring. It's a big white blob or multiple white blobs scattered throughout the MRI. It's essentially dead tissue where the immune system has attacked the brain, he continued. That's probably the closest thing you could come to if you wanted to look at a snapshot from one of these individuals. You can pretty quickly see that there's something wrong. Now, of course, these are loaded terms like wrong. What does that mean? Just biologically wrong or something wrong with the way the brain is functioning? Approximately 100 patients, mostly, and this is really interesting, defense or governmental personnel or people working in the aerospace industry. Dr. Kit Green studied some of the people from what Nolan called a smorgasbord of patients. You have a smorgasbord of patients, some of whom had heard weird noises buzzing in their head and got sick. Now, of course, with a lot of close encounters, we have heard about this, right? Whether it's an alleged nuclear propulsion craft or some kind of radiation effects physiologically on the eyewitness or experiencer, as it were. And sounds, buzzing noises. We know that Betty and Barney Hill heard buzzing noises as well, which is really interesting. Of course, these are two people in this case. So if there was some kind of brain damage, that means they would both have to have brain damage and hear those sounds due to the brain damage at the same time, which I think is pretty unlikely. Now, this article, I think, is pretty balanced. They're leaving the door open for skepticism, but not closing the door completely. They're not shutting down any possibility of a UAP being an actual, off-world craft or what have you. Quote, a reasonable subset of them had claimed to have seen UAPs, and some claimed to be close to things that got them sick. Ultimately, his team learned the people who they originally thought were damaged had a, quote, overconnection of neurons between the head, the caudate, and the putamen. So the number of people that had this quote overconnection led to the open question: did coming in contact with whatever it was cause it or not? Was it a predisposition? Did they have a condition that caused the actual experience, or did the contact or the experience, the sighting of the UFO, did that cause the effects? Feeling sick, buzzing noises. Nolan said that approximately a quarter of the MRI patients who claimed they had an encounter died from their injuries. And the majority were found to have symptoms identical to Havana syndrome, but some people who have seen UAPs didn't have Havana syndrome and instead a wide range of symptoms. This past comment I thought was a little odd. Nolan said that approximately a quarter of the MRI patients who claimed they had an encounter died from their injuries. I wish they went into a little bit more specifics there. NASA report. Meanwhile, a jaw-dropping NASA report says the organization isn't, quote, not closed to the possibility of extraterrestrial life existing. So that's good. And then, of course, they reference below the new X-Files style unit on the ground investigations into UFOs, probing the possible threat of these craft. So one of the thoughts that I had about this was, if there is some kind of white matter or overconnection of neurons in the brain that's causing these UAP encounters, my understanding is that this sort of brain damage, and I'm obviously not a doctor, would happen later in life, possibly through trauma and what have you. And we know that from children on up, all kinds of people of all ages and all kinds of health conditions have seen and experienced more than just buzzing sounds and a visual sighting. And this has been brought up throughout ufology over the many decades. Are experiencers experiencing something that really originates from the mind? Whether you are Terrence and Dennis McKenna in the Amazon tripping on mushrooms and you see a UFO rise out of the river, or is it, like other sciences, like schizophrenia, for instance, where, people think they saw or heard voices or had emotional imbalances, and it wasn't a demon, it was explained biologically. So can we explain away all of the cases of UAPs and alien abduction and that sort of thing with a simply, a biological explanation that there's something wrong with me or you, something went wrong with the brain? So here's my other takeaway on this. We know for a fact, here, I'll quote right here, an article. Anyone suffering from emotional trauma or PTSD may exhibit emotional scars for months or for the rest of their life. When trauma such as PTSD is inflicted, lasting changes within the key brain can be created. Traumatic stress is typically associated with an increased cortisol and no norepinephrine level in response to the cause of the stress. And this happens to about 8% of Americans. Now, those of us who have experienced depression, anxiety, or trauma or PTSD, something does shift mentally and emotionally. And, science has proven that indeed the brain is affected. How many of us have experiences that were really intense? And those are the experiences that we remember, because during that intense experience, our brain formed new neural connections. And that's why those memories stand the test of time. They don't fade away. They're less likely to be misremembered. And so I think that what's happening here is, I think that if they're showing evidence of white matter or any kind of neurological connections beyond the norm in the brain, it seems to me that any of us who have seen a UFO, especially those who have had more intense encounters, it is a traumatic or a minor traumatic experience, or just a really intense experience. It can be mind blowing. It shifts the way you see reality, and that to me could certainly have um, possibly an adverse effect on the brain, the neurology itself. Of course, I'm speculating to some degree, but I mean, there certainly is plenty of studies to suggest that experiences change us, change who we are. Some people have a traumatic experience; they get physically hurt, and suddenly they can play piano. Uh, so the brain is a mystery for sure, but it seems to me that I would guess that most of these UAP close encounters, the effects on the brain are a reaction to an outside experience coming in, which is essentially, mostly what our behaviors and our personalities are built on. It's built on, millions and millions and millions, billions of moments throughout our life and shaping us who we are. And some of them were completely unaware of how they affected us or changed us. And some, that are more extreme, we are, quite aware of how it has affected us. I want to go on to another article here. I thought this was really fun. Really good sighting in Illinois. This is a Bigfoot sighting. If you want to go to the BFRO, that's the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization website, it's a good site for ongoing reports, and I put the link for both of these articles down below. I just wanted to share this really quick. This is quote, Saturday night, I was driving at 10:30 p.m. in central Illinois, heading from Cass County to Tazewell County. A car was probably 3/4 mile ahead of me, and I could see their tall lights, taillights, or tall lights. I saw a large animal jump into the road about 40 yards ahead. When it hit the road, I could see very large legs spread in a dead run with large swinging hairy arms. The arms switched back and forth. We can kind of imagine that to the ground as its body was leaning forward. It leaped across the road in 2 jumps. So I thought that was really cool. If you want to go check that out, I swear there's probably not a month that goes by that there isn't a Bigfoot sighting. And this is a good, clear sighting, a good description. This isn't something that someone saw in the woods between trees moving around. And honestly, it only takes a few seconds to recognize a ton of detail. When we were in Yosemite, you would drive on the road and something like a buffalo would cross the path right in front of you. We saw a mountain lion at night, with lights, but at night cross in front of the car so quickly. But it only takes you a couple seconds to capture that detailed memory. So I think we should really take these unobstructed Bigfoot sightings seriously. I think that they're some of the best sightings out there. The eyewitness sightings, even more so than any of the grainy footage that we get. And I want to say that I'm glad that we're celebrating the new UAP office. I just wanted to read a couple of quotes from Rubio and Gillibrand. It is my hope that the creation of a new Joint Defense Department and Intelligence Community Office focused on UAPs will provide the resources, analytics, and attention needed to determine what is loitering around our military training ranges. The DoD and IC need to ensure a more uniform collection strategy is in place and that we continue to destigmatize reporting on UAPs, particularly from military aviators. Significantly, we also maintain the transparency and accountability that my provision in last year's Intelligence Authorization Act report provided by ensuring ongoing unclassified reporting. And then this is from Senator Gillibrand, our Senator of New York State. All right. Our national security efforts rely on aerial supremacy, and these phenomena present a challenge to our dominance over the air. Again, threat dominance, but whatever. Staying ahead of UAP sightings is critical to keeping our strategic edge and keeping our nation safe, Gillibrand said. Quote, my amendment will establish a formal office to report and respond to UAPs and give us the scientific capabilities needed to track and share data, investigate sightings, and develop a response to this growing security threat. The United States needs a coordinated effort to take control and understand whether these aerial phenomena belong to a foreign government or something else altogether. I love that our senators are using these phrases. I absolutely do. Um, I am proud to have worked alongside Congressman Gallego to include this amendment that will help remove the stigma surrounding UAPs, protect our nation, and keep those who serve safe. Again, protecting our national security interests means knowing who and what are flying in U.S. airspace. Right now, our system of tracking and identifying UAPs is scattered throughout the Department of Defense and other departments and agencies, yeah, of the federal government. Based on briefings I've received as chairman of the House Intelligence and Special Operations Committee, I firmly believe that the DoD and the intelligence community need to come together and create a permanent synchronized structure to collect and analyze UAP data. And this kind of goes back to the first article that I was reading about the fact that we have an interest here with a doctor who has not only Dr. Gary Nolan studied the little alien body, but actual brains of military personnel who have experienced a UAP encounter. I don't know how you can read this any other way, the way that all this is coming together. Now, I get it. The new UAP office is there are some issues regarding its feasibility and the resolve that the Pentagon will have to support it. But in light of those criticisms, the Pentagon came out and said, "No, we're taking this seriously." Of course, they've said that before. We'll see how this one turns out, but it's kind of hard, I think, at this point. I think we've passed the threshold. We've crossed the Rubicon. We're there. I think that it's now just a matter of pushing forward, one step at a time. We will eventually get some legitimate answers. Hey, baby, that's Maya trying to get in here. We will get some answers regarding the UAP phenomena from the government. I think that's just inevitable. Let's see. Hey, Amy, how are you? I don't know if you're still here. So yeah, this is something I think I'll start doing again. It's been a while since I've done any kind of streaming on the channel and Paranormal Now. But we've been so busy with the house, and man, it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work, and I really miss doing Paranormal Now and Coffee and UFOs. But the good news is, Paranormal Now will return on January 13th. My guest will be Mike West and David Halperin. So two skeptics coming from a little bit of a different perspective. David Halperin's been on the show before. He looks at the phenomena from a mythological point of view. Mick West is, more of a scientific critique. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for popping in, guys. I'll keep you updated. Peace and love, and happy holidays.